Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream on YouTube, Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, Getter, all the other places as well, on Monday through Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. On Saturdays, we go live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 hour later for Socialism Saturday, because it's my weekend too, and I need that extra hour on the weekends. And guys, what we do on this channel is we do deep dives into different groups involved in the culture war. And of course, our focus tends to be on the far left, because the far left are, quite frankly, controlling everything. They are the most powerful group. But occasionally we do break off and we look at the far right too. I do not discriminate on this channel. All tiers are tasty to me, whether they be conservative tiers or liberal tiers. I don't really care, because I'm not a part of either political tribe. And what we try to do on this channel is we hinge back into reality and we look at what really is going on, and we look at what people are really saying and really talk about, because that's how we can assess where our crazy culture is going. And I just want to say thank you to two ladies today. Carlin, you looked fantastic on Liz's show too. Loved it. Yes, guys, if you missed it, I did have a little chat with Liz Wheeler. Well, I actually had the chat last night, but then she posted it on her channel and on her Twitter this morning. So I do want to thank Liz Wheeler, give her a big shout out. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed the chat, and I was really excited that she was genuinely interested in a lot of this stuff. You know, a lot of times with like conservative influencers, I find that, and no offense to conservative, I find that a lot of like influencers on the right are not always, they don't always really care about the things they claim to care about. But I actually found Liz to be really open to watching, to listening to it, and really open to what was going on. And, you know, she definitely wants her audience to understand what's going on. And so I did really appreciate that. So If anyone ended up here as a result of being introduced to me on Liz's show, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you stick around for a while because I promise you, if you never knew existed in the world, and we see some crazy, crazy stuff on this channel. So definitely shout out to Liz for that. I do hope we get to have many conversations in the future. She's a good egg. And, also a lesson to me as well, because listen, guys, I can admit when I'm wrong. There was a stream I did a while back about James O'Keefe in which I may have judged Liz Wheeler specifically a little harshly. I thought she was kind of like your typical conservative influencer. I really did. And I turned out to be very, very wrong about that. And so I can get things wrong too. And I can admit when I was wrong and I was wrong about this. And so I was glad to be able to have that interaction with her. That was really great. As always, do make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Guys, I'm going to have a story coming out later that is like has all the best, and it's from the socialism conference, but it's actually from a video that they live streamed from the socialism conference that we watched on the channel last week, but it has everything. It's glorious. It's got abortion. It's got queer theory. It's got abolish the family. It has every aspect that is crazy about the dystopian left all rolled into one, and they put it in a nice little bow for us, and they delivered it up to us on a silver platter, and it was quite frankly the best. And I made a bunch of clips of it, and I'm doing a little walkthrough to explain what was like we're gonna basically listen. I never want to be one of those channels or one of those publications that just makes content to own the left, to make the left look crazy, to make the left look stupid, all that stuff. I actually want to use stuff to explain to you what their ideology is. But this is going to have both. I'm going to be able to use it as a lesson on multiple different aspects of the far left. And as a bonus, the leftist in it looks crazy and definitely has she has the crazy eyes and everything. And so we're going to have a lot of fun with this. That's going to be going up on the Substack later on tonight. We're going to do the Twitter thread tomorrow. I was hoping to have it up earlier today, but life gets in the way, and that's just the way it goes. Anyway, guys, I did last night post this article on the Substack. Robert Reich thinks we can't define the terms woke, critical race theory, cancel culture, and socialism. Listen, I really want everyone to go take a look at this article. Let me just pop the link in the chat just to make it easy. And if you're not subscribed to my Substack, you can subscribe while you're there. I'll even pop it in the chat over on Rumble. Hi, Rumble. How are you? And the reason that I want people to read this article is because this progressive jackass basically challenged people to define these terms the other day on Twitter. Now, here is the thing, guys. If you are going to be involved in the culture war, if you're going to be fighting back against the woke left, I cannot emphasize this enough. You have got to learn to define terms on the fly. I can't tell you. I've been repeating my definition of critical race theory for years. Critical race theory is an ideology that started in the academia in the 70s that says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in every institution, in every interaction. And the job of the critical theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in every circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred. I can say it that fast because I've repeated it 8,000 times from Sunday. And the reason that I have to repeat that definition 8,000 times from Sunday is because repetition is how we memorize things, and you need to be able to memorize things. You need to be able to memorize the definition of the term woke, which means authoritarian, and it exists on both the right and the left. You need to be able to memorize the definition of the term cancel culture. You need to be able to memorize the definition of the term socialism, because I promise you, if you are seriously engaged in fighting back against the woke left, you will come into a circumstance where you're at a school board meeting, or you're doing something with a parents group or something like that, and some leftist is going to come up to you with a video camera and they're going to say, "You don't even know what critical race theory is." And when that leftist comes up to you with that video camera and says, "You can't define critical race theory," I promise you, the very last thing you want to have happen is that you go, critical race theory, it has to do with race. Like, you don't want that to happen, because then they're going to have you on video, and they're going to put that video on the internet, and they're doing it just to make you look stupid. You need to be able to define the terms that you're using at the drop of a hat. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people who I have repeated the definition to them over and over and over again, and then they do find themselves in exactly that circumstance, and they can't repeat the definition off the top of their head. And then they go, "Carlyn, you were right. I should have memorized that definition." And I said, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. So, guys, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go over to that post, and I give you my definitions for these terms in the post. So you're going to have mine to play with. But before you look at my definitions, I want you to write down your own. If you were put on the spot by a woke leftist and they had a video camera stuck in your face, and they said, "You don't even know what critical race theory is. Can you even define critical race theory?" And you go, like, what would you say? What would you say? Like, legitimately, right now, without cheating, without looking at the answers, what would you say? Keep yourself honest. And if you don't have a good answer, then memorize the definition. And by the way, you don't need to memorize my definitions. There are people out there who disagree with my definitions, and it's perfectly fine to disagree with my definitions. If you like James Lindsay's definitions better, memorize those. If you like Chris Rufo's definitions better, memorize those. If God forbid you like something that Tim Pool said, even though it probably is not going to be the correct definition because Tim Pool has yet to memorize the definitions himself, but at least memorize the definition. I don't really care whose it is. I don't care where it comes from. I would like it to be hinged into reality, but the most important thing is that you have something to say when that happens, because I promise you it will. And you're not going to want to be unprepared when it does. So that is up on the Substack right now that you can find over at Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And if you do appreciate the work I'm doing, please consider signing up for a subscription to the Substack. That's $8 a month or $80 a year. You can, of course, subscribe for free. A lot of my content is free. There is some premium content on there as well. And really, guys, funding my work is how I pay to do conference infiltrations, okay? I can't go to things like the Socialism Conference if people aren't supporting my work. I'm an independent journalist. I do pretty much everything myself, believe it or not. And so I need to pay for things like airfare, for hotels, for recording equipment, for disguises in the case of the Socialism Conference, for food while I'm away, stuff like that. So if you fund the work I'm doing, I promise you I'm going to bring you the most unique, unwoke, independent journalism on the internet. We are already looking into another conference infiltration, and I want to bring another person with me for this conference. It's going to be coming up later this year. I cannot tell you what it is. I can't tell you where it is because we don't want any haters on the internet tipping off the conference that we're going to be there. That takes away all the fun, doesn't it? But there is another conference coming up later this year that we do want to attend. And I want to make this very clear too. When I attend conferences to cover them, I am not disruptive. We do not disrupt things. We don't go up to the microphone and ask gotcha questions. We don't cause trouble. We don't try to sabotage anything. Our job when we go to these conferences is not to be disruptive. Our job when we go to these conferences is to listen to what they're saying, to get as many of their materials as possible so that you can learn what people are being taught at these conferences. It's really, really, really important. So if you want to fund the next conference that I'm doing, I think it's going to cost around $4,000, if I'm honest, between me and the other person that I want to bring with me. Make sure you sign up for a subscription on the Substack. Again, $8 a month, $80 a year. Teamwork makes the dream work. You guys can fund the next original conference infiltration that we do. You can also subscribe on my locals. You can subscribe on my Patreon. You can make a one-time gift. You can subscribe on any number of the 8,000 Substacks that I have. You can subscribe to my Twitter. However you want to fund my work is fine with me, whatever way is best for you. And I really do appreciate the support. The other thing that I want to mention, just to remind people that you can support my work by heading over to my merchandise store. I might be a little bit biased. Okay, I am. But I really do think I have some of the coolest merch on the internet. I really do. I love my merchandise store. I'm having so much fun with it. It is unwokeart.com. And you can find the link in the description below. And you can get all sorts of cool stuff on the merchandise store, just like this Socialists Always Lie t-shirt that I was wearing around yesterday. I actually wore this shirt around my local mall when I was picking up my glasses a couple weeks ago. And I got to tell you, a lot of people, when you're going through the mall and you're wearing a shirt like this with like big lettering, and people who agree with you, just like they look at you and they're like, they nod at you. I got a lot of those nods on that shirt. It's a fun shirt to wear around. You can also get things like the gorgeous All Tears Are Tasty tumbler, because we don't just drink leftist tears on this channel. We drink conservative tears as well. There's all sorts of other stuff on the Unwoke Art Store, including the kind of covert t-shirt that I just launched, but I didn't launch it officially. Check this out. I have a new Trump mugshot t-shirt. I'm calling it Orange Steel because I had to. I had to. I have more of a fun Trump mugshot t-shirt, but I had to make the next t-shirt to be a little bit more ominous. It even has Halloween covers, and you got to give it to Trump, man. Trump is like the only person in the world that can pull off blue steel from Zoolander in a real mugshot. And so I called it Orange Steel. It is in the Unwoke art store right now. It is an unofficial launch. I haven't actually even really talked about it. We've got all sorts of other stuff too, including the I'm Not in Charge of Your Feelings t-shirt, which I really like that one. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, the one I'm wearing today, the Be Bourgeois t-shirt with our fox with the beer on it. So we got lots of cool stuff over there. There's t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's mugs, there's notebooks, there's all sorts of stuff. And of course, all purchases do go to support my work. So I hope you'll pick yourself up some swag. I'm going to be launching a Christmas line pretty soon. Well, I'm sorry. Excuse me. A holiday line, because that's what we have to do apparently. Because not everyone. I don't celebrate Christmas, so I guess, but I still want to buy stuff around the holidays and have excuses to do it. So that's going to be coming very soon in the Unwoke Art Store. All right, guys. So what we're going to be doing today is Ezra Klein. Ezra Klein is with the New York Times. We're going to be listening to a podcast today. I know we like to have video, but this is just the way it goes, right? Ezra Klein works for the New York Times, and Ezra Klein had on our favorite Marxist librarian. Now, I actually don't think I've played this clip on the channel, although it's talked about in a whole bunch of places. And of course, Liz Wheeler covered it. A whole bunch of other journalists cover it as well. But when I infiltrated the socialism conference week and a half, God, it seems like a lifetime ago, but it's like only like a week and a half ago. That's crazy. Or actually 2 weeks ago, I guess, almost 2 weeks ago. God, time flies. Anyway, when I infiltrated the socialism conference, the most high profile clip that I got from the entire conference. And guys, I still have a whole bunch of stuff I haven't released yet, by the way. I still have a metric ton of stuff that hasn't been released yet. But this is definitely the most high profile thing, because Emily Drabinski is the Marxist lesbian president of the American Library Association. Now, I don't really care that Emily is a lesbian. It makes no difference to me at all. But I do care that Emily is a Marxist. And Emily had tweeted that she was a Marxist like when she got elected to be the president of the American Library Association. And, people were upset. And Emily was actually scheduled to speak at the socialism conference, and people got upset about that. Emily didn't really understand why, but people were upset. So what happened is the socialism conference actually canceled Emily's presentation, or Emily probably canceled with them. I don't know exactly what happened, but anyway, Emily's presentation was quietly canceled. This has been misreported in a lot of places. Okay, Emily was not an official speaker at the socialism conference. If anyone's reporting that Emily was an official speaker at the socialism conference, they're getting it wrong, and they should do better journalism. Okay? Because she wasn't. What Emily was doing was just attending the socialism conference. I saw Emily all over the place at the socialism conference. Emily was literally just walking around attending sessions at the socialism conference, just like any other Marxist. And when I got this clip of Emily saying that libraries need to be a site of socialist organizing, it was pure dumb luck. Because I was covering a session called Confronting the Backlash, about the backlash to anti-racist education. It was with Jesse Hagopian and Wayne Yu, who are two people involved with Rethinking Schools, which is a socialist company that provides classroom and curriculum material to teachers to teach in schools. They're involved in Black Lives Matter in schools. They're involved in the Zen Education Project. These are two uber woke teacher trainers. They're advancing these ideas around fugitive pedagogy, which is smuggling banned ideas into the classroom. That's a whole other stream for a whole other day. Anyway, I was covering their session. Emily just happened to be in it. And during the session, Emily went up to the microphone, just like anyone in the session can do, because how socialists run conferences is they do the presentation of the main speakers for like half of the session, and then for the second half of the session, anyone in the audience, and that's where I got this clip of Emily. So let's listen to what Emily Drabinski said at the socialism conference, and I apologize if you've already seen this in other places or heard this in other places, but it's quick, I promise. Okay, here is what Emily said at the Socialism 2023 conference when she went up to the microphone to voice her opinion.
Comrade will be followed by the comrade in the green, followed by the comrade here.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a librarian. I just wanted to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for bringing up libraries and Austin libraries, but also the libraries of all kinds, public libraries and higher education libraries who've been under attack in similar ways. But I think your point that public education needs to be a site of socialist organizing, I think libraries really do too. And I haven't seen that for the working in libraries, but I think there's real opportunity here to both connect what's happening in public education, what's happening in libraries, but also we need some help in the libraries. We need to be on the agenda of socialist organizing. So I just want to get up and say that. So thank you.
I just want to thank you for your work and career to stick your neck out and then fight at a difficult time. It's an inspiration to me.
Okay, so a few things about that clip. Number one, I have to apologize that it's a little fuzzy. That was quite literally the very first session in which I was actually using my little pocket recording device, and I wasn't even sure it was going to work. And I can't tell you, and my little pocket recording device is about this big. It's really, really tiny. You just stick it in your pocket, and it's supposed to record stuff around you. So I got better at using the recording device as the conference went on, and I got more used to it. But that was the first session that I used it in. And I got to tell you, when I was literally sitting right next to the microphone when Emily came up to the, but I wasn't paying attention to who was at the microphone. But when I heard Emily's voice, you guys should have seen my eyes. I was like, oh, because I knew what Emily's voice sounded like. I had been listening to her podcast for like the week prior to the conference. I was like, oh shit, that's Emily Drabinski. And so like I knew, and I was like having a whole conversation with God all the way back. I was like, please have recorded, please record, please record, please let the recording work out. So it was a little fuzzy, but at least it did record, because that was like, I was like, no one's ever going to believe me if I don't have this recorded. So it worked out, and we got Emily on the record. This was 2 weeks ago, on the record, saying that she wants libraries to be a site of socialist organizing. Well, of course, we can suspect what the mainstream media is going to do. And what the mainstream media did is they started running interference for Emily Drabinski. First, ABC News ran a piece about how libraries are under attack, and then NBC News ran a piece about how libraries are under attack, and then CBS News ran a piece about how libraries are under attack. Of course, none of these major news outlets, even though they have full and complete access to this information. It's public information on the internet that Emily said that libraries should be sites of socialist organizing. Of course, none of them reported on that. They're all like, it's a crazy conspiracy theory that this Marxist woman is a Marxist. Well, is it really a crazy conspiracy theory? Because I have her on tape in terms of, it being something that she said. So of course the mainstream media is running interference for Emily Drabinski, and that includes the New York Times and Ezra Klein, because Ezra Klein just released an episode yesterday, in which he is talking with Emily Drabinski. And the description of this episode is: public libraries around the country have become a major battleground for today's culture wars. In 2022, the American Library Association noted a record 1,269 attempts at censorship, almost double the number recorded in 2021. Library events like drag story times and other children's programmings have attracted protest. How should we understand these efforts to control what stories children can freely access? Emily Drabinski is the president of the American Library Association, the Marxist president of the American Library Association, and an associate professor at the Queen's College Graduate School of Library and Information Studies. She is steering an embattled organization in a moment when libraries and librarians themselves are increasingly under fire. This conversation unpacks political and cultural anxieties fueling the attacks on libraries. The guest host, Tracy McMillan Cotton, discusses with Drabinski how libraries are a bulwark against the increasing class divide of American life, how small infrastructure, the public library, differs from big infrastructure like highways and bridges, how library classification systems can entrench the status quo. Oh, look at this. That's all about destabilizing the system right there. That's queer Marxism right there, folks. If they're talking about the entrenched status quo, pay no attention to my musical taste, Eddie, all right? Even if you like my musical taste. The parallel between political attacks in the library and the U.S. Postal Service, how censorship attempts to fit in a broader landscape of the anti-queer, anti-trans legislation and more. This episode was hosted by Tracy McMillan Cotton, a columnist for the Times Opinion, a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, and the author of Thick and Other Essays. So, what I thought we'd do is I thought we would listen to this podcast that was released just yesterday from the New York Times. And let's learn how the mainstream media is running cover for Emily Drabinski's efforts to make libraries a site of Marxist organizing. How's that sound to everyone? It's only about 47 minutes long. I'm going to do commentary. You guys are welcome to do commentary as well. Unfortunately, we won't have anything to watch on video, but that's just the way it goes. And this is about understanding how the political machine works. This is about understanding how the mainstream media will come in, ignore evidence that's right in front of them, and instead tell whatever story they want to tell to back up whatever political biases they have. And of course, the New York Times is right on the top of the list of this one. And so that's what we're going to do today, guys. We are going to listen to this here podcast and we're going to talk about it. Now, before we get into that, just a couple quick things. Number one, please make sure you have mounted that like button for me. We're going to do, today's episode number 68. I have some ideas about what we're going to do for episode number 69 tomorrow, and it will involve copious amounts of mounting and inappropriate jokes. So let's just, save up your good mounts for tomorrow. Today, you might want to be a little kinder to the like button. Maybe shake hands with the like button, put your arm around the like button, gently caress the like button, hold hands with the like button. Do whatever you want to do, like a nice romantic gesture to the like button today, because tomorrow we're mounting the shit out of that like button, and I'm not going to be apologetic about it either. But anyway, guys, there is a big disparity between the number of people who are watching right now and the number of people who have done something romantic and nice to that like button. And mounting the like button lets YouTube know to have more people join us on the stream. It makes sure that YouTube recommends the stream to people. It really does help me out. It's a very simple thing that anyone can do to help spread the word about what I'm doing, and I really appreciate it. I also, yes, that's a tinge. That is exactly what I'm thinking. We're going to do queer theory tomorrow. It's going to be a queer theory episode, a good sex work episode. We're doing something saucy tomorrow. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but we're doing something, all right? Oh, God damn it. If I don't randomly choke into the microphone. Hang on. God damn. The mugginess is fucking killing me. Can I tell you guys? It's like killing my ability to talk. I don't know what's going on. It's so muggy here. Anyway, ignore my hacking into the microphone. I have something else to say. Okay. Number one, I have a couple more things I want to say before we get started, because I am starting to get obviously a lot more attention on the fact that I infiltrated the socialism conference. This is separate from the New York Times thing. I'm just doing a little precursor thing because there's a couple things I want to say. I have a lot of new people watching my content, and I don't need water. Look at my husband bringing me a nice cold water from the fridge. Thank you, Victor. Okay. There's a couple things I want to say to people who are new to my channel. First off, if you're new to my content, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Just to let everyone know, we do not have an unmoderated chat on the channel. I do have rules. Rule number 1, don't be a dick. That means you don't insult me. You don't insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because it's my house and I can do whatever I want, but you cannot insult people on my channel. That includes me. That includes other people. Just cut it out. Number 2, no whining. If I ask you to stop doing something, just stop doing it. It's really not that hard. I don't want to hear whining. I don't want to hear complaining. I don't want to hear back talk. This is like, I will be the stern goddamn headmistress on this channel because I am old enough to not have to deal with this, okay? And so don't be a dick, no whining, that's all I ask. Couple quick things I want to say before we get started, especially to the new people who have joined recently. Okay. I don't want people to think that I'm like the only person in the world that can infiltrate socialist events, because I'm not the only person in the world that can infiltrate socialist events. And I want to make that very clear. However, I've gotten a lot of messages from people lately that are basically saying, like, I want to do what you did. I want to go to socialism event. I want to do what you did. I want to go. Okay, I understand your inclination to want to go. I really, really do. And I am willing to teach you what you need to know in order to be able to go to these events, because there are certain things I can't go to because I'm way too public. I get the crap beat out of me if I went. I'm too old for that. I can't do that. So I need to create more people who are willing to go to socialist events. However, I want to say this very clearly. You can't just walk into a socialist event without prep. You really can't. It's not going to work out, guys. The types of groups that we're looking at when we're doing the socialism content, they're not Democrats. They're not progressives. They're not even democratic socialists. I very rarely use democratic socialist content because the real socialists, the real far left, the people who are driving the woke agenda don't like the Democratic Socialists. They think that the Democratic Socialists are too close to the Democratic Party, and that makes them too close to capitalism. And so the groups that we watch don't even allow their members to join the Democratic Socialists of America. So these are not the same groups. And a lot of people think, because there are not a lot of people covering this content, they think that if they know what the progressives are doing, that's the same as the socialists. They're not the same thing. They think that if they know what AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing, that's the same as the socialists. They're not the same thing, okay? The socialists that I've been covering and looking at, most of them are radical revolutionary socialists. These are not not dangerous people, okay? These are people that are like legitimate Antifa. Not all of them, but there are a lot of them that are legitimate Antifa. These are people who do not respect laws. These are people who have no gumption at all about beating the shit out of you. These are people who really, want you dead, for lack of a better term. Like, they hate everyone who agrees with them politically. And so the reason that I tell you this is and no, these are not the WEF. Exactly, two ladies. This is not the WEF group. Two different groups. The reason I tell you guys this is what I am genuinely afraid of. And I mean this. I am genuinely afraid of this. I am afraid that someone on the right is going to be a smartass, is going to think they're all mentally retarded, because that's what they see on Libs of TikTok, and they're convinced that these people are mentally retarded when they're not. They're really not. They are not mentally ill. They know what they're doing, okay? And I'm really afraid that someone on the right is going to be a smartass about it, not take it seriously, think if she can do it, then I can do it, and they're going to waltz right into a socialist conference and they're going to get their ass kicked. I really am afraid of this. I don't want anyone copycatting me and end up in the hospital or worse. I really, really don't, guys. And so please, if you want to do something like this, it's not that you can't do it, but you have got to take it seriously. You have got to do your homework. You've got to prep. I prepped to go to that socialism conference for a full year. That's not a joke. I watched at least one long form socialist training every single week for a full year. Most weeks, I was watching socialism more than once a week. I was researching these people in my free time. I knew who the activists were. I knew what their ideas were, not some conservative interpretation of their ideas, because most conservatives don't know what these people think. They really don't. They think they do, but they don't. Okay. We know what they think because we actually sit down and we listen to their long form content. Anyone can do this, but your commitment is that you need to take the time to do it, and you need to genuinely understand what their perspective is from their point of view, not from your point of view, from their point of view. Because if you're going to go to one of these events, you need to be able to speak their language. Okay? They speak a different language. They quite literally speak socialist. And I will teach you how to do this on Socialism Saturday. It's a very immersive experience, but please, please, please do not copycat me and go to a socialist event because you think it's going to be easy, because you think you're smarter than them, because you're not smarter than them. You're not. They know what they're doing. They're going to sniff you out so quickly. And the best case scenario that you get is that they will kick your ass out. That is the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that not only will they kick your ass out, but the real Antifa are going to follow you out the door and kick your ass, and you're going to end up in the hospital. Okay? I was legitimately afraid for my safety the entire time I was there. I wore my mask everywhere. I wore my mask walking down the street to my hotel, several blocks away from the conference center. I wore my mask inside my own hotel, but when I was going to the event, I didn't leave my room unless it was to go to the conference and then go right back to my room. I had all my food DoorDash to my hotel. Like, this is very, very serious. I was afraid for my safety the entire time I was there. But the reason I did it is because I prepped for it for a full year. I understood their culture. I understood how they dressed. I understood how they looked. I understood how they spoke to each other. I understood their norms for their meetings. And that was how I was able to do it and pull it off. Okay. So has that happened to you're asking me, has anyone ever gotten their ass beat by Antifa? Oh yeah, people have gotten their ass beat by Antifa. Has anyone heard of Andy No? These are the same people, guys. The same people that send Andy No death threats in Portland. Same groups. Not everyone at the socialism conference is involved in this stuff. But there are enough, okay? And so please, if you're going to do this, take it seriously, put the time in, and I will teach you to speak socialist. I will teach you how to do it. I will guide you. I will mentor you. I will help you out. But no smartassing. No dismissing these people. They are not mentally ill. They know exactly what they're doing. Every single time that you dismiss these people as mentally ill, you set them up to win, okay? And I don't want anyone getting hurt on my account. I really, really don't. I would feel very guilty about that. Please don't do that to me. It's very selfish, I understand, but like, I'm trying to help you. I really, really am. So that's the last thing I want to say for right now. I do want to get into our stream for the day, and I really, again, guys, like, I really appreciate your understanding on that. But like, I really am starting to get afraid there's going to be a copycat, and if people don't listen to me and they get hurt, I guess it's their problem. But I really don't want that to happen. All right, guys, let's dig in. We are going to be listening to this podcast episode from the New York Times, where they are running cover and doing PR for the chief Marxist herself, Emily Drabinski. Let's listen. No, not Sia, not Sia, not Sia.
You look around your business and see inefficiency everywhere, so you should know these numbers. 36,000, the number of businesses which have upgraded to the #1 cloud financial system, NetSuite by Oracle. 25. NetSuite just turned 25. That's 25 years of helping businesses streamline their finances and reduce costs. 1. Because your unique business deserves a customized solution. And that's NetSuite. Learn more when you download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist absolutely free at netsuite.com/Ezra. That's netsuite.com/Ezra.
From New York Times Opinion, this is The Ezra Klein Show. Hey, it is Ezra. I am on book leave this week, but we have the great Tressie McMillan Cottom sitting in the chair. She is a Times opinion columnist. She is the author of Lower Ed, The Troubling Rise of For-Profit Colleges in the New Economy, and the National Book Award nominee.
Can I just say, hang on, the troubling rise of for-profit colleges. I fucking love for-profit colleges. You want to know why? I worked in higher education for 10 years. I worked for mostly nonprofits, but I did consulting for some for-profit colleges, but I worked for all different types of nonprofits. I worked for small little nonprofits, or I worked for Ivy League schools. I've done work for 3 different Ivy League schools. And so I've run the full gamut of like nonprofit colleges. I've also done consulting for for-profit colleges like your Universities of Phoenix's, like your Kaplan, stuff like that. For-profit colleges are so much more efficient than nonprofit colleges. It's not even funny. I did my PhD at a for-profit college. I have no regrets. It's exactly the same accreditation, except it's actually made for adult learners, and they treat you much better, and it's so much more efficient, and there's no woke bullshit. The reason these people don't like for-profit colleges is because there's no woke bullshit in for-profit colleges. They are explicitly designed to help people like learn a specific subject matter without nonsense. Now, I will say this, their undergraduate education is not always that great, but I think in terms of like graduate education for like adult learners, ain't nothing better so far as I'm concerned. I got into a graduate program at Dartmouth. I could have gone to an Ivy League university for a graduate program. That's very, very true. It happened in 2007. I got into their Master of Liberal Arts program at Dartmouth College. I wish I had my freaking acceptance letter. I wish I still had it. I know I have it somewhere. It's probably in my basement. But I chose to go to a for-profit college because I worked in higher education. I knew how much better they were than the nonprofit colleges, and I will not apologize.
She has been a guest on the show before, a host on the show before. Her episodes, no matter where she is sitting, in which chair, are always some of my favorite. So I'm excited to hear what she does this week, and I hope you enjoy it too. And before we begin, one more thing today. So I am doing the annual Jefferson Memorial Lecture for UC Berkeley, which I'm excited about as a kid who grew up in California, idolizing and then getting repeatedly rejected by UC Berkeley when I applied there. And it's going to be the first time I try to work through the ideas of the book in public, with an audience, in conversation with someone else who knows what they're talking about on these issues, Amy Lerman in this case. And if you'd like to join and hear what I've been thinking about, you can. Tickets are available at calperformances.org. We'll put the link to the event page in show notes. And again, that is October 5th at UC Berkeley.
The library is as much an idea as it is a place. It promises books, yes, but also services, access, and public infrastructure in an information-based economy. For a long time, the idea that we all generally want more of what the library offers has been a taken-for-granted American value. But recently, libraries have become a political lightning rod, where even the most basic assumption of the value of this essential public good is now somehow controversial. According to the American Library Association, last year there were 1,269 attempts to censor what materials appeared in public libraries. Across the nation, there are contentious debates raging over things like drag story hours, children's programming, and even what books and programming should be available for adults in public and school libraries. Emily Drabinski is paying very close attention to these efforts to censor libraries. She should be. Drabinski is what you might call a librarian with a capital L. In 2022, she was elected president of the American Library Association, a professional organization representing the nation's librarians. She also happens to be a queer person, a parent, a longtime librarian, and also in her academic work, a scholar of critical librarianship.
Critical librarianship. What does that come from? What brand of study does critical librarianship come from, do you think? What does that sound like? Critical librarianship? Emily used to work at CUNY, the City College of New York, where she was a critical pedagogy librarian. Yup, critical theory, which means Marxism. Anytime you hear critical anything is Marxism when it involves these people. So yes, Emily Drabinski is a critical pedagogy librarian. Gee, I know that's shocking to all of us. And I also want to point this out, Fish Addict. No, this is not rare. It's not. It's not. You guys think that socialists don't have kids. They do have kids. A lot of them have kids. And they're raising their kids to be little socialists. Socialists have entire childcare programs for their kids. They have entire childcare programs set up at their meetings. At the socialism conference, there was childcare at the socialism conference where they brought their children to play little socialist games so they could learn how to be little collectivists, so they could learn how to be the future generation of socialist activists. There was actually a presentation at the conference called Kids as Comrades, which was about bringing childcare to all socialist meetings. I'm going to be covering it on the Substack. So no, these people have children.
I wanted to talk to Emily about the political and cultural anxieties fueling anti-library sentiments across the United States and what it all says about the health.
It's not anti-library sentiment. It's anti-Marxism sentiment. No one is pissed off at libraries for being libraries. We just don't want Marxists running libraries as a way to indoctrinate people into Marxism. Stephen says, Tim Pool thinks socialists don't have kids and the conservatives will naturally take over. That's because Tim Pool doesn't know what he's talking about, because Tim Pool hasn't taken the time to actually research what he's talking about. He hasn't talked to anyone who actually knows what they're talking about. And, Tim Pool is misinforming his audience because he doesn't know what he's talking about. God, if I had a dime for every single time Tim Pool got something wrong when it came to the far left, I'd have a metric shit ton of dimes, I'll tell you that.
Of our body politic. As always, the show's email is EzraKleinShow@nytimes.com. Welcome, Emily Drabinski, to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm having a good day and really excited to be here.
You've written that children are people who deserve private reading lives.
Oh, shit! Oh, that started off with a bang, didn't it? Children are people who deserve private reading lives. Let's break that down for a second. Socialists, much like Scientologists, believe that children are adults in little bodies, and they're fully formed human beings that just have little bodies. And because they're just adults in little bodies, they are capable of making all their own decisions for themselves without guidance of these things that we call parents. Socialists believe in the abolition of all private property. And I know people who are regulars on the channel have heard this, but some people are new. Socialists believe in the abolition of all private property. They believe they want to abolish your ability to own a home. They want to abolish your ability to have a private kitchen in your home. They want to abolish your ability to own a business privately because they think that collective resources should belong to the collective. And yes, they believe that your children are private property that they need to liberate from their parents. They want children to be the property of the collective, to be cared for by the collective, to be parented by everyone. Or as Hillary Clinton might say, it takes a village to raise children, doesn't it? Well, socialists literally mean that. They don't want children to have parents. They want everyone to care for all the children. What could possibly go wrong? So Emily just kicked us off, or this podcast host just kicked us off with a bang. Children need to have a private reading life. That's because Emily doesn't believe in parental rights.
And I think about that a lot. One, because I interact with a lot of young people, and they certainly think about their private lives. I remember being a young person and being obsessed with having a private life. And yet, when I look at how
Hang on. Tom J says, wrong. Tim Pool says Democrats will abort more kids so Republicans will outnumber them, which equally Tom J shows just how retarded Tim Pool is, because they're going to take Republican children in the public schools. We've already covered Tom J. Come on. You've been around on the channel for a while. We've covered this. First of all, not all Democrats abort their children. Secondly, there are all many more Democrats than there are conservatives. Thirdly, it doesn't matter if they abort their children because they're going to take yours through the public schools. This is just not hinged into reality. If this is what Tim Pool thinks, it is just not hinged into reality at all in any way.
how we got here and where we are now when it comes to the fight about libraries and books and reading material, I don't hear a lot of the voice of young people in the conversation about where we are now. So I
Hearing the voice of young people in the conversation is Paolo Fieri, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The woman doing this podcast is a socialist, mark my words.
wondered if you could tell me what you mean when you say children are people
Yes,
who
Emily.
deserve private reading lives.
Yes, Emily, tell us what you mean,
That's
Emily.
a big question.
No,
and
it's
I don't
not.
know how popular it is to think of kids in that way. Since I became president of the American Library Association, I have spent so much time reading through our documents, our policies, our position papers, our analyses. And one of the things that makes me quite proud is the commitment that we have to children as people who can read. I have a child of my own, when everyone's like, parents should only be able to control what their children read. I'm like, do you have a child? Have you met a child? The degree of control you have over a child is more limited than I sometimes want. But
Well, that's funny, Emily, because I distinctly remember being at the socialism conference and there was a presentation by a woman named Bettina Love. Bettina Love is a professor of education at Columbia University, one of the most woke teacher educators you'll ever find. And Bettina Love explicitly talked about trying to control the materials that her children were accessing because Bettina Love, and this is her right because she's a parent, Bettina Love wanted her children to be brought up with very strong pro-black culture because that's where she comes from. She comes out like the Black Power movement, like whatever. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that she maintained very close access over what her children actually had access to. And that was said at the socialism conference, Emily. So why is it okay for Bettina Love to control like what her children had access to, and it's not okay for non-socialists to control what their children have access to? I mean, it seems a little hypocritical to me.
think it comes down to respect for individual people and their right to their own imagination and the sovereignty of their own minds. And attacks on libraries right now are shaped and framed as attacks on books, but I think we all know they're attacks on people and attacks on children. We hear less from the readers and the writers of these books than I think we need to.
I think a lot of parents would agree, almost as an instinct or an impulse anyway, they would agree strongly with the principle that children deserve private lives. Like, right, of course, my child, they get their own room, for example, right? Sure, they should have their privacy, they get their inner world. But I think they struggle with what that means in everyday practice, especially when it comes to, when they're looking at their own child and against the larger context of fear.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The world is this big, scary place, and I am their only defense, their last defense against everything, because that's kind of how we've painted modern parenthood. So you mentioned you are a parent and you're a librarian, a kind of big librarian in the sort of like capital L sense of librarian. So do you have those competing impulses? And if so, how do you navigate them as a parent and capital L librarian?
No, absolutely. Like I said, I have a teenager. My life is consumed with worry about him and his future. And I worry for his world when he grows up and the world he's living in now and the constraints on his imagination from all kinds of different directions. And I also worry about his choices, you know? Does he always make good choices? Absolutely not. Can confirm he made a bad one just today. But I made some bad ones this week also. So giving him the sort of grace to be a full person. But when it comes to the media he consumes and the books that he reads, yeah, I mean, I can't say it doesn't worry me. But that struggle around the worry, that grappling with what I want for him and who he is and who he wants to be and who I want him to be, that these are the conditions of loving other people, of having children in our
Truth.
worlds, and there aren't easy answers for it. I think that's one of the things that's surprising, the conviction some people have over what is right for children. I just, I look at my kid and his struggles every day, and one thing I'm not is sure about a whole lot.
All right, so we'll come back to the tensions, by the way, between what parents might want for their kids broadly and what they want for their own kids, because that is one of the fundamental tensions.
That's how they're going to attack parental rights, just so everyone knows. Okay, this is something that conservatives don't want to hear, but you need to hear this. People who are regulars on my channel have heard me say this quite a bit, but if you're new, again, I have to repeat. If you want parental rights for you, then you need to argue for parental rights for everyone. That includes the right to raise your children or their children in a way that you specifically would disagree with. There are a lot of leftists right now, and they're correct about this, that are making the argument, I want my kids to have access to Drag Queen Story Hour. I want my kids to go on cross-sex hormones if that's what they want. I want my kids to learn critical race theory. Guess what, guys? Parental rights for you mean parental rights for everyone, even if they're doing things that you believe are going to mess up their children, because their children are their responsibility. They're not your responsibility. And so if you start legislating against some of this parental rights stuff, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble, because guess what? The left controls the power structure, and they're going to use every single thing you legislate against them is going to come back to you. Okay? Every single thing that you try to do against them is going to come back to you. You have got to wrap your head around the idea that parental rights for you means parental rights for everyone, okay?
Idea that there's what I want for my kids, and that gives me a sense of certainty that I want to project out into the world. And I happen to think that's where a lot of the political and social conflict lies, as you mentioned. How can people feel so certain when you yourself as a parent is like, I'm riddled with
I'm
uncertainty
just guessing every day. Yeah.
every day? And I think a lot of parents are. But let's talk a little bit more about your current role. So you campaigned to be the head of the American Library Association at a moment of great stress and distress, I might say, for libraries and for the country more broadly. And I think those two things are related. So my first question is why? Why did you campaign at this moment to
Because
head up
she's a
the ALA?
Marxist and
I
wanted
mean, why not
power.
me? Why
Why
not
not
me?
you? Okay.
I was
All
like,
right.
let me just step in here and do this. So, I ran because I care a whole lot about libraries and I care a ton about library workers. And I know what kind of stress we're under. I see it in my colleagues. I see it in the people that I talk to. I've been a librarian for a long time. I know librarians all over the country. And there's not a one of them that feels secure in their ability to do the jobs that we want to do. And I thought that if I ran for president of the American Library Association, making a public argument about the importance both of libraries as public institutions that secure the public good and library workers as the people who are responsible for that and need the kind of support to expand that work, that whatever happened, it would be good to have that public argument out in the world.
What does it mean, by the way, for public libraries to be a model or an example of the public good? Because I tend to agree with you. Just let me show my hand here, by the way. I think it
Oh,
is one of
we're
the
all
few
shocked that you
places where
agree with
people
her.
from
We're shocked.
multiple social classes still have to interact with each other as we have retreated from each other in public life, right? People can take their personal vehicles. We don't have to interact with each other on public transportation. We don't interact with each other in the same shopping. But libraries are one of these places where we brush up against each other. But like I say that, and even I can hear it to my own ears. It's like this highfalutin idea. And I'm always trying to make it really tangible for people. What does it mean to you when you say, listen, the public library is a model, it is the public good?
So I was in Des Moines, Iowa, touring a library, and they have a library of things, which many, many public libraries have these days, and they circulate book club kits and sensory kits for kids and science materials and cake pans and tools. And this library had started circulating 2 carpet cleaning machines.
She tells
And
the
I
story
remember growing
everywhere.
up in Boise, Idaho, my mother saving up for months to be able to rent that carpet cleaner at the Albertsons in Boise, Idaho, so she could clean our carpets. And this library takes that out of the equation, and it means everybody can clean their carpet. And it seems like a small thing. It's like one thing happening in Des Moines, Iowa, but, multiply that by the hundreds and thousands of public libraries across the country, and every single one of them has something like that, that's securing and expanding access to public resources for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be anybody. You walk in. They did say there's a line. They have 2 of them, and they said the whole line for those carpet cleaners is 45 people in line. So you got to wait, which is a testament, too, to how much people want access to those public resources, how high the demand is when we make public goods available. Not a small thing.
No, it is not.
Not a small thing at all. And one of the things I love about working in libraries is that it's material, those highfalutin thoughts about the public good. In the library, rubber meets the road just constantly. Every day, it's a space where using the bathroom and getting a drink of water, like, those are public goods, and we're the only people that offer them. I think a lot about indoor space also. Like, the bigger the library, the more indoor space you have. I was in Grimes, Iowa, and the library there had served a community for decades and never gotten beyond its sort of one-room size. The library director was telling me over years of one-on-one conversations with the people who were in the city council and the people who run the businesses in this small town, and Grimes eventually, after all that time, managed to secure 82% support from the community for a new library that's 4 times the size. And that means so much more space for people to come and meet and gather, so much more room for books, so much more room for bathrooms. It's brilliant and amazing and good, and we want more of that.
Yeah. This is really small infrastructure is basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, when we talk about infrastructure in this country, we think bridges and roads, and those things are super important. Don't get me wrong. But I got to think the small infrastructure matters a lot too. And it's the kind of infrastructure that people don't think about needing until somebody says, hey, could you use a carpet cleaner?
That's right. Yeah.
And then suddenly there are 45 people.
And think about what institutions are there that circulate things. I think about that a lot, that, like, moving things around and sharing them. Like, you've got the post office and you have the library. Those are the 2 kind of infrastructures that circulate goods and services among the people, and the library is like a place that does that.
Does Emily think that the post office is a model of, like, efficiency? Because there's a reason that people will FedEx things rather than send it through the post office. There's a reason that people will choose private, like, shipping companies and mail companies and not go through the post office. I mean, I'm not like, the post office is like, the post office literally drives people working for the post office to shoot up the post office. Like, let's not dismiss this. Like, how many I mean, really, like, going postal is a saying for a reason. I'm just saying. I'm not sure they're the model organization that we want to be modeling society after. And also, exactly, the post office is not free. Great minds, Beth. Exactly. There's a reason they call it going postal.
And kind of the only one.
Yeah. Not a surprise, by the way, that you just mentioned 2 institutions that have each faced a political uphill battle for capital and relevancy over the last 20 years. The post office facing its own set of challenges and the idea of the library facing its own. And both, as you point out, really important to circulating the things that people need.
You look around your business and see inefficiency everywhere, so you should know these numbers. 36,000, the number of businesses which have upgraded to the #1 cloud financial system, NetSuite by Oracle.
No.
25,
No
absolutely
commercial.
free at netsuite.com/Ezra.
No
That's
5 years with another person I've never.
Family, friendship.
No
But just
commercial.
looking at them.
You can love something.
There we go. No commercial.
Should there be an afterlife? If I get there, I want it written in the big book that I loved libraries. But there is such a thing. I know that, you can love something and want it to be better, and that can be an act of love and service. And you have spent a lot of your scholarly work on critical librarianship. And I think this would surprise people, first of all, that there is a robust field called critical librarianship.
There is, quite robust. There are lots of us. Yep.
And in fact, the librarians that I have had the great fortune to hang out with over the years, almost all critical librarians.
Oh, yeah. There are a bunch of us.
So what is critical librarianship? Tell us what that is.
It's like anything. There are a million definitions, and who you ask will tell you something different. I think of critical librarianship as taking a critical view of the systems and structures that produce the library as we know it and experience it, and think about ways that that library could be different. So I've done most of that work around cataloging and classification, and thinking about the language that we use to describe things, and thinking about the order in which we put things. And so you go into a library and you think the books are just arranged in Dewey Decimal order, and that's kind of annoying, but whatever. But critical librarianship takes an interest in what that knowledge organization system, what the story it tells about itself through the ordering mechanism.
You have written that one of the insights of critical librarianship since the 1970s has been this acknowledgement that invisible intellectual structures actually have a relationship to the material world of knowledge construction. That something's happening in there.
Mm-hmm.
You go in there, and like you say, you just go, oh, hey, look, this book comes before that book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what's happening when that book goes before that book? Why does that matter?
So everything for me comes from my own experience of the world. So I got a job. My first college library job was at Sarah Lawrence College. And I came to that library as it was finishing a major shift. And like, if you're a librarian and you've worked on a major shift of the collection, shouts to you. I hope we never have to do it again, because you got to take all the books. You got to put them
A major shift of the collection. Why would they be doing a major shift of the collection, do you think? I've never heard that term before, so I'm just positing. Would it be that they're removing a lot of the books from the collection and adding a lot of the books to the collection to do a major shift in the content of the collection? Oh, yeah. Emily is very cautious when she's speaking in public. Emily is only honest when she's in private with her socialist friends about what she's really doing. But she's being very cautious in her language.
and move them around. And so I was working on shelving the sort of last sets of those books, and we had a copy of Christine Jorgensen's autobiography, a memoir of a trans woman, published, I think, in the 1960s. And that book was downstairs in the basement in the R section, which is the section for mental illness, psychiatric diseases. We had a second copy of that book that was with a historicizing introduction, and it was on the third floor in the HQs, which is where we shelved social problems. And I was struck by the distance between those books, right? And they tell you that one of the books is that gender is a problem in your brain and the other one is gender is a social construction that is malleable. And the distance between those says something. And the elevator was slow, and so the physical distance was really real. You know, you had to walk up all these stairs to get to the two books and put them together. And so the context of where the book sits is consequential for the meaning we can make from it.
You know, I was thinking many of us encounter, quote unquote, the catalog as just the card catalog. But you're saying it's more than just this like accessible, lowly, practical way to find a book or a resource. Basically, what you just described to me, you know, the catalog is power.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of power in where the books are placed and how.
Absolutely. I'm working on an oral history project with a colleague right now, and we're recording
So one of
oral.
the I watched last before the socialism conference, so it had been a couple weeks ago. So I did 2 spy streams on the channel, both with libraries. So if you want more library content, refer to the last 2 spy streams I did. But the reason I bring that up is in one of those spy streams specifically, they were talking about how they use things like book clubs and like prominent displays in the libraries to make sure the right books are elevated to the right people. And so like don't underestimate these things, guys. I was talking about this with my supporter community earlier today. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we formed like if we did this program, we're not terms in terms of like trying to compete with like drag queen story hour or anything like Kirk Cameron is doing, which I think is a fine idea. I actually think it's interesting that Kirk Cameron is like competing with drag story hour. I think that's a good way to do it. But what if what if people did some sort of subversive reading group at their local library where you use your local library to have like book clubs around like maybe like the classics like 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, like the classic dystopian books. You could get into like other forms of dystopian books as well, but like use the book clubs to do like commentary on what's going on in the world in terms of like tech censorship and collectivism and stuff like that. Use your public Road to Serfdom, exactly, that'd be a great book. Use the public libraries to host these book clubs where you're making it cool and you're making it kind of like punk rock, but you use it to talk about how the socialists are taking over the country in like an undercover way. I mean, the library can't deny you access to public resources. Why aren't we doing this? Like maybe target like don't just target the kids. Like again, that's what Kirk Cameron's doing fine, but like target young adults, target like older audiences that can read those types of books and have intelligent conversations about those types of books. I think it's a fun idea. I don't know exactly how to do it. I have no idea, but if people are interested in that idea, maybe it's something that we should try.
Histories of people who have developed alternate classification schemes. And we were recording with a couple of librarians who were part of developing the Chicano thesaurus for Chicano movement materials. And the way they talk about that experience of trying to find information about themselves and their experience in the Berkeley Library, say, and just the absence of it completely, the inability.
Hang on. Kansas Mama has a question. Would we be able to get a group of people together and all hit the no, 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 no. This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. I'm going to tell you why. Because if you get a group of people together, you're going to be inclined to talk to each other in places where people can overhear you. You're going to give away that you're working together without being aware that you're doing it. I think that I would only do like a maximum of like 2 people. And I'm talking you guys don't stay in the same hotel. You guys don't go out to dinner. You guys ignore each other entirely. Like you plan so that you're not going to the same sessions. You have no effing contact with each other the entire time that you're there. And then maybe afterwards, or like if you really do it like so that you're not staying anywhere where you don't want to give them any reason to associate you all together. Okay. So no, I think that's a really bad. I think it's rife for error on so many levels.
Ability to find anything. You know, they threw themselves into making this index because there was no other way for them to organize information about their experience. Like they had to. So like I think if you don't see yourself in the catalog, which is like a ton of us, it's pretty clear and it's pretty problematic.
I've got to talk about, though, why.
And guys, I'm going to say this too, and I know Kansas Mom is new here, and so I don't mean any disrespect. I really don't. If you are asking questions that I'm saying, no, absolutely not, don't do that thing to, you have not done enough prep work to do one of these events yet. You just haven't. I'm serious, guys. If you haven't done a full 6 months of Socialism Saturday, I don't want to hear that you're infiltrating an event. I really don't. It's a really bad idea. And I know that people don't like doing prep work. I know that people don't like doing homework, but right now, when you're a beginner, and there's nothing wrong with being a beginner. We all had to start somewhere. There was a time when I didn't watch socialism. I didn't understand this stuff either. We all start at a beginner stage. But when you are a beginner, there are just a lot of things that you don't know, okay? And so it really, like, I cannot emphasize this enough. You need to prep. You need to prep a lot, and you need to be serious about it. And so if I'm telling you no, I'm not trying to shit on your ideas. I'm really not. But there are reasons that I'm saying no that are about protecting your safety and making sure that people have the ability to actually execute on the ideas. Listen, guys, at this socialism conference, there were any number of ways in which I could have gotten caught. And I prepped for a full year for this. There were any number of ways in which it could have gone bad. In fact, I made mistakes leading up to it. I did things that I learned from that I would never do again, like the mistakes I made in how I signed up for it, how I registered for it, mistakes about the hotel. Like there were all sorts of learnings that you just don't know right now because you think you're walking into like a normal conference. You are not walking into a normal conference. That's not what this is. And you just want to be as you want to eliminate as many opportunities for error as possible. Yes, you have to be a better actor than they are to be able, like, you cannot have them sniff you out. Do not treat these people like they're normal people. These people want to kill you. I'm not joking about that.
This may have come to a head when you were finally elected, April 2022. Other people then were surprised. They don't know what critical librarianship is.
Mm-hmm.
It's Marxism.
You write a tweet that says, hey,
Marxism.
I cannot believe that a Marxist lesbian who believes that collective power is possible to build and can be wielded for a better world is the president-elect of ALA Library.
Oof. You know, it was an excited utterance.
Right? There was a lot of backlash. Okay, so some Republicans accused the ALA of being suddenly a radical leftist organization. To be fair, they now accuse everything of being a radical leftist organization.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had an audio clip of Emily saying that she wants libraries to be a site of socialist organizing, New York Times? Wouldn't it be nice if we had actual proof that Emily wants libraries to be a site of socialist organizing, and it's not just some insane conspiracy theory, but we actually had her on the record saying that? Wouldn't it be nice if you did your job and actually reported on that, New York Times? That would be pretty great so far as I'm concerned.
But I do think this was a new experience for the American Library Association. The Montana State Library cut ties with the ALA. Lawmakers in states like Wyoming, Georgia, and Mississippi pushed to do the same. We can get into the political mudslinging, but how unprecedented is this?
This is unprecedented, and it is extraordinarily painful. And the attacks on libraries and individual librarians, to see those intensify and to see those attacks.
It's not an attack on individual librarians, Emily. It's an attack on you because you're a Marxist who we have recorded on the record saying that you want libraries to be a site of socialist organizing. We don't want libraries to be a site of socialist organizing because, quite literally, you assholes want to tear down the entire system that the United States is built on, and you want to use publicly taxpayer-funded resources in the form of public libraries to do it. We, the people paying the taxes, don't want you doing that shit. I don't know how this is so hard to understand. These people are radical revolutionary socialists. Emily was hanging around at the socialism conference for 3 days, attending sessions with radical revolutionary socialists. And that's separate from the fact that we got her recorded saying she wants libraries to be a site of socialist organizing. Don't tell me this is much ado about nothing when you want to use public taxpayer resources to elicit a Marxist revolution that overthrows capitalism in America.
Be directed at institutions that would protect them, that represent them, that they are a part of. You know, the American Library Association, we run right around 50,000 members, and each one of those people is committed totally to the project of expanding access to information for everyone. And so to have this politicization of our role get in the way of that work, for me,
you're the one politicizing your own role when you say at the socialism conference that you want libraries to be a site of socialist organizing. You're the one who politicized it, Emily. You're the one who politicized it by tweeting, I can't believe that a Marxist lesbian got elected to be president of the American Library Association. We don't care that you're a lesbian. We care that you're a Marxist. You are the one that politicized it.
Is the most painful part of this experience. And I just, you know, wish I could go back in time and push that tweet right back in the bottle because it wasn't,
I bet you do. You said the quiet part out
it was
loud,
an excited utterance for me and my friends. And to forget for a moment that I was in the public square was.
For her and her friends, because her friends are Marxists. Her friends are Marxists. That's why it was an excited utterance with her and her friends.
Regrettable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a person, you know. I got a kid in high school. I'm worried about him. You know, yeah, it's been tough. And, you know, I think
Marxists are
all
not
I want to do
too.
is make good on the promise of the ALA for American librarians and the communities we serve. And to have this stand in the way of that has been a devastation for sure.
Yeah. What do you think it is about the American Library Association and librarians in this moment that feels like an acceptable target for this political discourse?
It's not librarians, it's Marxists.
You represent something, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What is it that makes you both vulnerable? I think we can kind of, you know, under-resourced or not much of a political defense. I think we can see maybe the vulnerabilities, but such a rich target. Like, what is it that is being projected on the ALA and on librarianship in particular, you think?
You know, it's very confusing to me because the vast majority of people love the library. Survey after survey, like poll after poll, nobody wants what's.
It's not about the. Do you guys see the trick that they're playing? The New York Times lady is like, I don't know why people hate libraries. Why do conservatives hate libraries? Everyone loves libraries. Why are conservatives hating on libraries? Doesn't everyone like books? Doesn't everyone like ideas? We doesn't everyone like community in the library? Why are conservatives going after libraries? It's not about libraries. It's about Marxism using publicly funded taxpayer resources. And the New York Times knows this. They know this. They know it's like, what? I can't imagine why people would go after a library. It's not about effing libraries. If you assholes were not politicizing libraries in the first place, then this conversation wouldn't even be happening. Exactly. This whole show is just propaganda. This is Emily Drabinski's public relations tour after she got caught on tape saying libraries should be a site of socialist organizing.
happening right now. Nobody wants this. The Michigan Library Association ran a poll recently that 78% of their respondents said they didn't want restrictions on reading materials, and they wanted to have the right to sort of guide their children's reading rather than ceding that to a handful of people. The ALA's polls are similar. Our Unite Against Book Bans campaign surveyed the public, a cross-section across the political spectrum, and the vast majority of people, again, really want libraries and want libraries to be available and accessible to everyone. So I think that's part of what's confusing to me is like it's a small and vocal minority that somehow has the power to shape the narrative about American libraries right now. And how they got power is the thing that I find really confusing and the thing that I really puzzle over. But I think the part that we were talking about earlier, that libraries are public institutions that are about expanding access to public resources, that we are sharing institutions, that we want to take resources that are held in common and distribute them equitably among everyone. I mean, that idea is
resources held in common and distributed equitably, not equally, equitably among everyone. What does that sound like to you? Resources held in common and distributed equitably among everyone. And equity doesn't mean they're all distributed equally, right? Equity means from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, which is Marx. Equitably, that sounds like socialism, doesn't it? It sounds like communism. It sounds like socialism. It sounds like Marxism. It sounds like socialism, communism, socialism, 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 Marxism. And guys, just so you know, that at the socialism conference, the attendees there used the terms socialist, communist, and Marxist interchangeably. They did not distinguish between the three. Now, there may be some groups that do distinguish between the three. I know for sure, actually, there's some communist groups that believe that they're not like part of the socialist groups. And so I'm not suggesting there are no groups that distinguish between the three, but in terms of the ones at the conference, they use them very interchangeably. So one was as good as the other. They would even say them all like in the same sentence, like socialist, communist, it was. So I don't distinguish between the three, not because there's not a difference, but because they themselves don't distinguish.
I think the thing that's most under threat right now.
So there is a perspective that could say, we agree on one thing, right? The critics and critical librarians agree that the library is powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Just perhaps disagree on how the power should work. Does that seem fair?
That seems fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they they disagree about how the power works. The critical librarians disagree about how the power of the library works, because what the critical librarians want to do is they want to redistribute the power of the library from the bourgeois to the proletariat. They want to create a dictatorship of the proletariat using the library to do it. Where else was there a dictatorship of the proletariat? Someone remind me? Where else was there, if critical librarians are just redistributing power using the library to do it, that kind of sounds like a dictatorship of the proletariat to me. Where else was there a dictatorship of the proletariat? Where else? Russia definitely had a dictatorship of the proletariat for a little while there. Yes, they did. They had a little revolution over China. China also had a dictatorship of the proletariat because Mao learned from Russia. Exactly. Vermont is trying their very best to have a dictatorship of the proletariat. Vermont's really giving it the old college try. They really are. Oh, yeah, Cuba. Cuba has a dictatorship of the proletariat. Yep. You guys got it.
Put something really controversial before you.
Okay.
Can a library ever be politically neutral?
Yeah. I mean,
yes, Emily.
This is a question, right? So libraries.
Oh, is it?
What do? We provide essential.
It's a question, Emily. It's a question on if a library can be politically neutral. Why is that a question? Why can't Emily Drabinski say, yes, libraries should be about providing books and resources for the community. Libraries are politically neutral. Let's just listen to that again. The fact that she didn't immediately say, yes, libraries can absolutely be politically neutral, that tells you everything that you need to know, guys. I just want to go back 15 seconds, listen to that again.
Okay.
Can a library ever be politically neutral?
Yeah. I mean, this is a question, right? So libraries, what do? We provide essential information and services to the public, and we are intended to be valued pillars of our community. That's what we're for. And we're not politically biased organizations. That's not what we do.
Really?
This is not normal, I think, to be embroiled in this kind of a political fight. And so
then why do you believe that libraries need to be a site of socialist organizing, Emily? Then why do you believe this library? Why are you trying to make libraries a site of socialist organizing, as you said 2 weeks ago?
Neutral is a thing that we, I think, many times strive for. Like neutral meaning we want everybody to be able to come in, and we want something in our collections for everyone. But it's hard at this moment when intellectual freedom and the right to read are under siege. It's hard to imagine a modern library as a neutral bystander.
Oh, God.
Let's talk about book challenge.
Did you hear what she just did? She was like, we really want to be politically neutral. We really want to be politically neutral, but it's those evil conservatives. The conservatives are trying to politicize the library. It's not us. It's not me who wants to make libraries a site of Marxist organizing. It's the conservatives. And if the conservatives are going to politicize the library, then we just have no choice but to fight back against the evil conservatives who are trying to bring politics into our library, even though it was the Marxists that ran to be the head of the American Library Association. Conservatives weren't even concerned about the libraries until the Marxist critical pedagogy librarian won the election to become the head of the American Library Association, proudly tweeted that a Marxist lesbian became head of the American Library Association. She was the one who politicized this from the first place by saying, putting her politics out front. And then saying, I don't know why they're attacking me because I'm a lesbian. And because you're a lesbian, Emily, it's because you're a Marxist. But no, it's the conservatives. Conservatives ruined everything.
The American Library Association has an office that tracks reports of book challenges. In 2022, that office received a record 1,269 challenges, which is the most on record. That's nearly double the 729 challenges reported in 2021. What patterns are we seeing in these challenges?
They're all the patterns that you would guess, that you probably don't need me to say, but I think it's important to say it again and again. These books are books that tell stories about certain kinds of lives and experiences. The lives and experiences of Black people, the lives and experiences of LGBTQ plus people, the lives and experiences of people of color. The attacks are on those kinds of stories. Books that are about you and about me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We know not only that the books are disproportionately written by or about members of the LGBTQIA plus community, or by and about Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color, but recent research is also showing that they seem to be like the same titles over and over again, showing perhaps a pattern of identifying the same sort of books and authors over and over again.
There's a list.
Yeah. On the ALA's list of most challenged books in 2022, 4 of the top 5 feature queer characters, and that's a pretty consistent pattern going back several years. And then we sort of start to see a shift over the last few years to stories featuring more trans characters.
Now I'm going to say this. And again, people have heard me say this a million times if you watch my channel regularly, but some of you are new. There is truth to the fact that conservatives have tried to ban books that have nothing to do with porn. I don't want to hear it, conservatives. There is absolutely truth to the fact that conservatives have tried to ban books that were not pornographic. This is why I have never been on board with the book banning bullshit. The very first book that Moms for Liberty ever tried to ban wasn't about sex, it wasn't about queer, it wasn't about LGBT. It was Ruby Bridges. It was in Tennessee. I know because they went on CNN and bragged about trying to ban it. Ruby Bridges is not a graphic pornography book. It is a book about a little black girl. And the Moms for Liberty who tried to ban it said that we thought it would make white children uncomfortable. It was bullshit. It was always bullshit. This is not the only time they've done something like this. Conservatives have literally banned a book about gay penguins that had no sex in it. Gay effing penguins that raised a baby penguin together as it was a book. It was a wholesome book about family and about love. And conservatives tried to ban that too. And so if conservatives had really restricted their book banning bullshit to only books that had graphic sexual content, they would have a much stronger leg to stand on than they do. But ultimately, the book banning bullshit is getting in the way of solving actual problems. I am not in favor of it. I think it's a big waste of time. Every single time you ban one book, the socialists are going to replace it with 5 more because they have socialist book publishers that churn these books out. They're keeping conservatives in a constant state of chasing their tail by constantly going after the latest book when you will never, ever, 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 I promise you, you will never be able to keep up with the amount of content that they're producing. It won't happen, guys. It really won't. And so they're actually right on this point. And they use it against conservatives all the time.
That coincides with a flood of bills, of course, restricting gender-affirming care for minors. So you see this intersection of the change in political narratives with books that are being targeted. So none of this is happening in isolation, obviously.
And the other argument that Emily's going to make, maybe she won't make it here, but I've heard her make it in other places, is she's going to say that she's getting requests, or that libraries, not her necessarily, but libraries in general are getting requests to ban books that the people that are asking for them to be banned haven't even read the books. And to be quite honest, guys, it wouldn't surprise me at all. If you're going to make a request, and again, I don't think this is worth wasting time on at all. I don't. However, if you're going to request that a school or a library ban a book and you yourself have not actually read the book, then you're going to be made to look stupid by the left. Because they are going to know. If they're just getting form letter after form letter after form letter that basically all say the same thing, and you're all asking them to ban the book, they're going to know that not a single one of you have actually read the book, and they're not going to take it seriously. All right? And this is what Moms for Liberty is doing, and they know it, and they're teaching their people how to identify it, and then basically saying, if you're getting a lot of letters like this that all look the same, a lot of emails like this and they all look the same, and they obviously haven't read the books in question, then they're teaching their people to ignore you. And if you keep doing this, nothing you ever say is going to be taken seriously by these people, because all you're doing is regurgitating talking points from Moms for Liberty.
We define the problem as simply one banned book. The solution is put that book back on the shelf. So I think it's really important to think about the problem more expansively as you're describing it.
Oh, God.
And so what would it mean to think?
Hang on. This is a really good point. Really good point. I can see a sabotage opportunity. Make up a fake book, and insert it on the two. This is absolutely going to happen. I'll tell you what, this is absolutely going to happen. Where like someone is going to get a hold of one of these books to ban lists that gets distributed by Moms for Liberty. They're going to put a fake book on there. Moms for Liberty people are never going to look into it. They're never going to look into if this book actually exists. They're going to send letters to a local library saying, we want you to ban this book for XYZ reason. And then that library is going to go to the media and be like, this book doesn't even exist and they're asking us to ban it. Ha ha, silly conservatives. This is absolutely going to happen if conservatives keep this up.
beyond that solution of put the book back on the shelf? What is the larger, if it is larger than that, how do we need to think? Instead of just going to them and saying, hey, no, not those books, showing up at my local library meeting, hey, not those books. What would it mean for me to argue more broadly?
I think a couple things, like, it's not just not those books, it's not those people, right? That's the link that I see when you're describing the sort of anti-trans laws, which are about not wanting trans people in the world. There was a recent study that came out looking at the status of, like, queer kids and queer books and queer school libraries, and 90% of the respondents said one of the places they feel safe at school is their school library. So there's that piece, and then I think the other piece is thinking about, like, the ban on the book. It's also a ban on the library and wanting the library to disappear. So we're seeing in some of the attacks, like, if the
Literally, no one wants libraries to disappear. We don't want you to use them as sites of socialist organizing. I don't know how this is so hard to understand, Emily. Emily, you're supposed to be a college professor. You're supposed to be smart, Emily. Why can't you understand the difference between, I don't know why people hate libraries, and people don't want libraries to be sites of socialist organizing? Like, this is really making Emily look, like, really fucking dumb, if I'm honest about it. Like, it kinda makes Emily look like borderline retarded, where she's just like, "I don't understand why do people hate the library so much? I just don't get it. I don't it must be because I'm a lesbian, because people hate the library." It's like, "No, no, 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 honey. No, no."
books aren't banned, or they're banned in a way that we don't want, or not enough, or not whatever. Like, it's hard to even know, it seems like it doesn't have a whole lot to do actually with what the library how the library engages or reacts. The next step is to defund the library altogether and eliminate it. And we see this in Michigan, it happened in northern Idaho, it's happened in states that are withdrawing their support from ALA, right? Part of the project is to dismantle these institutions, period. And so for all the reasons that we just talked about how libraries are amazing community anchor institutions, efforts to dismantle them and disappear them that seems part of the end game as well.
It reminds me so much what you just described. I just had this sort of shiver because it reminds me so much of the massive resistance response to school desegregation, which
Oh,
is if
yeah.
we have to allow one Black child, we'd rather there be no school at all.
Well, actually, you know what's interesting? So I mentioned Bettina Love earlier, and Bettina Love, that crazy teacher educator from Columbia. And what was interesting is Bettina Love made a really passionate argument at the socialism conference that she doesn't think that schools ever should have been integrated. She actually thinks that it's a weird thing, right? Because socialists are actually in favor of, like, segregation when they think it suits them. Bettina Love made a really, like, I mean, very impassioned argument about why integrating the schools was actually worse for Black children. And I'm gonna post it at some point. I don't know exactly when, because I'm honestly not quite sure what to make of it. Even when it was happening, I was like, "Huh." Like, she literally argued against integration. She argued in favor of segregation. She said that, and this is a Black woman, Black teacher educator at Columbia University, argued that segregated schools were actually better for Black children because they got to learn from Black teachers. And when the schools were integrated, the Black children, like, still went to the poorest schools, but that now they were learning from white teachers. I'm just not quite sure what to make of it, so I don't really know what to do with it yet, but that did happen.
We'll fill the swimming pool
Right.
with concrete.
That's right. Which always suggests that this is about some larger idea about who is included in the political project, for whom the legal provisions will acknowledge.
Mhm.
So not those books, not those people. Yeah. You made me think about something that I think I've heard some people kind of say, not in a way, but just sort of like a shrugging off about when a library closes, what the real impact is.
Mhm.
And that is because I think we have sometimes a latent assumption, even if we haven't thought it affirmatively, that, well, you have the internet, right?
Well, maybe you do.
Right. Oh,
You know?
okay.
Like maybe you have it.
Right. What is the impact when a book isn't available in a library, or a library isn't available in a school, or a library isn't available in a community, when we have the presumption that especially a vulnerable minority group or person can just find their people or find their material or find what they need in the safety and anonymity of online communities and materials?
There's a really big difference, right?
Yeah.
Between Googling it and having access to literature and imagination. And what other institution is there that exists that can give you
It's
both
interesting,
the
Sam.
technological infrastructure, right? Like the computer and the internet, but also like the person who will help you. And so when the library disappears, it's not just the book, it's not just that, but it's like everything that that library can do for the people in the community.
Emily, if you care so much about libraries and the future of libraries and making sure libraries are strong for their communities, why don't you resign? I mean, I'm serious about this. Emily has been caught in scandal after scandal. Emily is obviously a Marxist. We have Emily on tape saying she wants to make libraries a site of socialist organizing. Why is Emily continuing to put, like, Emily is the reason that state library associations are leaving the ALA. Emily is actively costing the American Library Association money. You guys don't think that recording I got of Emily is going to be used to get more state library associations to leave the ALA? It absolutely is. It 100% is. They're already working on it. And so, why is Emily continuing to put herself above the best interest of the American Library Association and the libraries that they serve? Why doesn't she just resign? It's an honorary position anyway. Emily herself has stated that this is just an honorary position where she travels around and goes to libraries and does stuff. Like, she doesn't actually have any say over the workings of the American Library Association. That's supposed to be what it is. So, why doesn't she just resign? Hasn't she caused enough problems? Hasn't the Marxist lesbian, with emphasis on Marxist, less emphasis on lesbian, because no one cares who Emily is sleeping with, I promise you. Why doesn't she just resign? Probably be better for everyone. She would probably, if she just resigned, a lot of states considering leaving the American Library Association would probably put those ideas on the back burner because it's her that's the problem in the first place. These are the important questions.
And I think sometimes when people are like, well, who needs a library? You can just go on Amazon. They're not remembering that not everyone lives a life like ours, which I think is another like sort of poverty of the imagination in this country sometimes, which is like, we don't imagine that anybody lives a life where they don't have a laptop. You know, we forget. And so when people say we don't need a library, I'm like, have you ever been to a library? Like, when I worked at the public library, the line for the computers would be 20 people long before we opened the door, all day long. They're such busy places. I think people forget that, like, the people who use the library a lot, they are also people who deserve the state to provide for some of their needs.
I like to say to my
They are people who deserve the state to provide for some of their needs. Why does anyone deserve the state to provide for their needs? Now, I will actually agree with Emily. I think that the libraries are good resources. I mean, if we have to have public funding for things, I've been involved. I've been into many busy libraries where people were lining up to use the computers because the only computers they had available to them. They do, like, they get in line for books. They do stuff. Like, I'm not saying that these aren't valuable resources, but no one is entitled to the state providing for their needs. Emily, that's your inner Marxist coming out. We are not entitled to other people's resources. We are not entitled to other people's money. We are not entitled to the state providing anything for us.
very well-to-do friends sometimes about the library, and one of its most basic functions, as you have so eloquently described, is that, oh, they do for people what you do for your elderly parents.
Exactly.
If you've ever walked your elderly parents through their technology problem, thank a librarian. They are doing that for
Seriously.
people all day long with much higher stakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's eviction as opposed to, I don't know.
My mom can't get her Kindle book.
There you go.
Which is a problem.
It is a certain type of a problem.
Yeah.
It is. You are right. It is a category of a problem that my mother also shares. I just finally canceled the Kindle. I couldn't.
We got rid of the Kindle. We got rid of the smartphone. We're like, these aren't necessary things. But you know what I'll say about my mom is she goes once a week on Wednesdays to the Boise Public Library.
That's right.
She checks out 7 books. She goes home. The following Wednesday, she returns those 7 books and checks out 7 more books.
My mom does the same thing with her audiobooks on cassette and CD. And it's been a godsend.
Yeah.
Because material culture, she can still work it. She can keep track of it. The problem with the digital downloads is that she couldn't touch it.
Yeah. Where is it?
Where
that question.
is it? That's right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get her over that sort of cognitive leap.
The best thing about being ALA president is I get to visit so many libraries. And I've visited so many libraries and they're all amazing. And some of them have phased out those collections entirely and others have, like, I was at a ski resort with my family last Christmas and the ski resort library has like a vast collection of DVDs, which a lot of libraries have gotten rid of because you can stream things. But the community there, they have a lot of people who work at the resort and live in their vans. And they don't have the internet in their van. And so they have a way to check out a VCR and a video so you can watch the video. And it's like libraries meet the needs of their communities.
All right. They're about to do like a break or something. So we're going to go ahead
your business,
ahead,
helping
and I'm not
business
letting them watch any commercial.
Sort of,
Oh.
materials are being... My sense... I'm not sure people know how libraries acquire their stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is really important because my sense in the debate and the fights, let me just speak just very plainly, the fights over book bans and information bans in libraries assumes that there is just this sort of, materials are being selected by fiat, by some authority on high. But what you have just described, there is a lot of negotiation between community needs and the materials that circulate in a library. How are books? Like, how do books get into the library?
They're born there, actually.
I thought so.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm really interested in the back end of things, right? Like the sort of how's the back infrastructure working, like how do the books, and they are selected and acquired by professionals who have training in collection development. Can you believe that?
No.
It's an actual job that a human does.
So you're saying this is not AI?
This is not AI.
Okay.
That's not to say that there aren't sort of subscription plans and selection lists and sort of things that make it easier to buy books for your collection. But think about it, there's so much opposition to school libraries and what they have on their collections. Like that's really where a lot of this fight is happening, is like at the school library. And the school librarian, all they do all day is like think about the kids in the school and look at the curriculum and select books that meet the needs of the curriculum. It's like none of the books arrive by accident.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And there exist all...
We're very clear that none of the books arrive by accident, Emily. That's the entire effing point.
Already these mechanisms, right, for people to nominate the books or ask for books or suggest the books. And
I think that's one of the things about this sort of the book challenge conversation right now. It's not as if libraries don't want community members to engage with us about what we have, make suggestions, even express concerns. It's the sort of bad faith, many book challenges, the challenges of books I haven't even read, kinds of things that are problematic.
Books I haven't even read, I told you.
You pointed out something that I wanted to kind of put a finer point on, that so much of this has focused on school libraries. And school libraries and public libraries are being targeted at, we think, roughly equal rates. But Is there a meaningful difference between trying to remove a book from a school library and trying to remove one from a public library?
Oh, that's a good question. I think school libraries function a little differently for their patrons, right? Like we were talking about the school library is like the place, I don't know, I ate my lunch there every day in the 7th grade. They're homes for kids in a different way. My kid went to
Well, no, 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 Robin. No, no, no. This is not about abolishing the family. It's not. It's not. Like, listen, there are a lot of things that are about abolishing the family, and I'm going to be writing about one of those things later on my Substack. So that is a thing, and it's real. But this is not about that. This is about Marxists gaining power in institutions so that they can use those institutions to fundamentally destabilize many aspects of our world. Of course, some of the things they're going to do are going to go down the queer Marxism route, which is going to lead to abolish the family. I just want to be really careful and really nuanced here to say that what we're listening to now in terms of the Marxist takeover of the American Library Association is bigger than this one specific issue, even though there are certainly things that they're doing that are going to contribute to that.
a middle school that didn't have a school library. There was a public library across the street. Guess how many times he went to the public library? 0 times. So that he didn't have that sort of center of gravity of the collection that's in a school library. And when there are efforts to remove books from the school library, that's a direct attack on the fabric of that community. And the public library functions similarly, I think. But there's something quite special about the school library as the sort of heart of a kid's life. Because for a kid, like the school is their whole planet.
Right.
There's no other real world for a kid in a lot of ways. Like their world is at school. And so removing a book from the school library, it's like removing it from their entire world.
Right. When you take a book out of a school library, you really do pull it out of a young person's whole sort of ecosystem in a way. And it gets me to thinking about what a library encompasses. So a library has this market element. It does allow certain transactions, it circulates things. But as we've discussed, there's also this democratic element. It does this in this way that is more about sharing than it is about competition for goods and for resources. So there's a market element because it's demand for certain kinds of books, and that certainly matters. You want things that people
Anytime you hear them talking about sharing versus market competition for resources, okay, let me ask this a different way. Sharing is different than market competition for resources. When you hear a person say, we should be talking about sharing and not market competition for resources, what should you be hearing? What do you hear when you hear those two things contrasted with each other? Sharing versus market competition for resources. Capitalism! When socialists talk about what they're teaching their kids, and they literally did talk about this at the conference, they said, we want to teach our kids we want to play games with our kids to teach them about sharing rather than about competition. We saw this yesterday. There's a there so I took a whole bunch of pictures in the bookstore at the socialism conference. I'm going to be posting them on the blog. You can watch the clip, the section of yesterday's stream about this. There was a game at the socialist bookstore that was called Coopoly. Coopoly is a take on Monopoly because Monopoly is a book about market competition and resources, but Coopoly is about sharing and collectivism. And in Coopoly, everyone wins. In Monopoly, there's only one winner, but in Coopoly, everyone wins. So that's a socialist giveaway right there.
Want. But you want people's voices to be heard. You want to serve the needs of a community. Even if there are only a few people in that community, you still want them to have some stuff
Absolutely.
that
Yep,
they need.
yep.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a member of a book club, and we read 50 books a year.
For the record, I'm an excellent Monopoly player. I not only won Monopoly the board game, I had Monopoly the video game that I played on my old school Nintendo, and this was like my favorite video game because I was so effing good at Monopoly video game. I would win every single time I played. Here's what you do. You buy every single property that you land on. It doesn't matter. And you focus on, I was focused on the cheaper properties. I wanted the Baltic Avenues. I wanted Vermont Avenue. I wanted St. Charles Place. Like, these are the cheaper properties because and you try to get as many in a row as possible because these are the cheaper properties and they are cheaper to develop. Like, Boardwalk and Park Place are nice. I'm not gonna turn them down or anything, but Boardwalk and Park Place are much more expensive to develop. So if you can get like a whole string of properties that are cheap to develop, literally every single time someone goes around that board, they're going to have to make it through your whole string of properties on one roll without landing on the ones that you have a hotel on because it's really effing cheap to develop them. You buy as many properties as possible, you develop them as quickly as possible. That's how you win at Monopoly. This is not effing rocket science. Yes, play against. Well, I used to play against on I didn't play against easy computer because it got too easy for me at some point. But it also does help to have properties being auctioned. If you're gonna play a computer Monopoly game, make sure you're playing the one with the auction when people don't want to buy the property anyway.
In 50 categories, and we've got the categories, and then you choose a book that fits in each category, and it has really opened up my reading. And I now read a whole lot of books in translation, which I never did before. And so I read books from all kinds of different parts of the world. And, it's true what they say about a book. It opens your imagination and makes the world wider. And I'm a big reader, but there are books I read now that I would never have read before.
You
Like
should
I
all
read
play
Paris Hilton's
Monopoly
memoir
online.
this year.
Oh, wow.
I had to read a book that is coming out and has a lot of buzz. And so that was a category. So I read Paris Hilton's memoir.
Okay.
And it's not a book that I thought I would read, but I read it and it opened my mind a little bit and made me think in new ways. And it was
There's
good.
no way in
And
hell
I'm
Emily read
glad
that
we
book.
had it. But I wonder if that's what
I'm sorry, Emily is so full of shit. There is no way in hell that Emily read Paris Hilton's memoir. Do you know what Emily just did in describing Paris Hilton's memoir? She was like, it was a great book, and I'm really glad I read it. And it really made me think. Did Emily give any specifics about the content of Paris Hilton's memoir at all? Even I know something that was in Paris Hilton's memoir because I follow this woman on Instagram who makes crowns for a living. Yes, she makes crowns. She's a professional crown maker and she makes crowns for Paris Hilton. And she was mentioned in Paris Hilton's memoir. Even I have not read Paris Hilton's memoir, and I can still give you one very specific detail, which is Paris Hilton's crown maker was mentioned in Paris Hilton's memoir. There is no way in this lifetime Emily read Paris. She did that thing where when you had to do the book report in school and you didn't read the book, and the book report you write is like this book was really great, this book really made me think, this book changed my life, or whatever, and you just write vague stuff about the book because you never read the book but now you have to turn in the book report. That's what Emily just did.
the hostility is, right? That we want. It's difficult to imagine supporting something that was for everybody.
No.
Even people I really don't agree with.
Paris Hilton had a
So as many
ghostwriter.
people as
She
are
didn't
mad
write
at me
shit. Come on.
for being who I am. There are lots of people that I don't agree with, but I still think that they have a right to read a book, I don't know. But then you think about what makes a social program successful. It's that everybody's in it. Social Security is durable because all of us use it.
Social Security is durable, Emily? Are you shitting me? Social Security is going to go bankrupt.
So when people say the library is vulnerable, I actually think it's interesting how durable it has been. This
is like when Emily compared libraries to the post office in terms of the post office is a well-run machine. It's no, it's not. And then she's like, Social Security is great. Okay, I don't think that's true, but you can live in the land of fantasy, I guess.
This moment is unprecedented. We haven't faced what, say, public education has faced because it's difficult to imagine privatizing the library. Right? You couldn't do it. I couldn't own every book in my house. I don't want to own Paris Hilton's memoir. I want to read it and then return it so someone else can read it, right? So it's actually...
Why can't you privatize a library? Places privatize libraries all the time. Emily talked about going to a ski resort that had its own library. Do you think that ski resort had a public library? No, that ski resort privatized a library, and they made their private library available to their patrons at the ski resort. There are all sorts of places. There are bookstores at every single airport that have a private library. They have shelves where you can swap out your books and get a new book. That is a private library. It is absolutely possible. There are private museums all over the world. If there are private museums all over the world, why can't there be private libraries? They'd probably be run by as nonprofits. Am I wrong that there are libraries that are run as not nonprofits? They're not public. They're not public. They're not necessarily taxpayer funded. You can fund them through donations if you want to. That doesn't make them public. God. Yeah, if the library was private, it'd probably be more successful. Carlin, what do you think about challenging books? Nope. We need to stop fucking around with the books. Listen, just because I'm listening to this episode on libraries, don't get it twisted. I'm not in favor of this book shit at all. I don't believe that we should be challenging books and wasting our time on books. I think it is a colossal waste of time. I don't think it will accomplish anything. I think we need to stop and move on to more viable tactics.
Surprising to me, I guess, in some ways, that this institution that does so much to provide equal access to literally everyone in a community.
Exactly,
I think
Kurt.
that is kind of the key to its durability as a social institution.
So are you telling me, Kurt, that there were lots of highly functional private libraries before the library was a publicly funded thing? And they were functional and they had books that people could borrow? And that was a thing?
You said in an interview that you don't want the library to get stuck talking exclusively on the terms they have set for us, rather than the terms that I think the rest of us operate on every day. What are the terms of the debate that you wish we were using?
I wish we were spending less time talking about the book banning stuff. I wish we were having a conversation about how to expand libraries, that we were talking about what good they do, that we were talking about not just the carpet cleaners in Des Moines, but the cotton candy machine they circulate at the Donnelly Public Library in Donnelly, Idaho, to make birthday parties in that rural part of the state a little more fun for kids, that we were talking about how to get more cotton candy machines. And every library I go to has something else like that. I just got back from Rotterdam, where I was at the International Federation of Library Associations and was going through the poster sessions and saw this library in Romania, where they had a program that connected elders who were some of the last in the community to know the sort of lost art of embroidering shirts in this particular Romanian way with young people.
Hang on, I got a super chat from Rottweiler. Rottweiler says, instead of banning books, why not produce anti-Marxist material for libraries and schools? Teach about the Holodomor, Mao's 100 Flowers. I think that this is a great idea. You know what? I would actually not have as big of a problem with the public schools if maybe what conservatives should do, instead of passing ineffective laws that claim to ban woke content but don't actually ban woke content, because there's not a single CRT law that's actually preventing CRT from getting taught in schools. I really hope people realize this. And I say that as a person that lives in a state that has an anti-CRT law. The anti-CRT law in New Hampshire does not prevent critical race theory from being taught in schools in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't. So what if instead conservatives put all of the energy that they're putting into book banning and all of the energy that they're putting into ineffective legislation, and instead they redirected that energy to doing legislation that requires schools to teach about the evils of communism, that requires schools to teach about the Cultural Revolution, to require schools to teach about the USSR and why it eventually fell apart. Why, like, to teach schools, like, that requires them to teach kids about why communism is bad. These things used to be taught in schools, guys. There are entire textbooks that explain the difference at an elementary school level. I know because I own some of them. There were entire textbooks that explain why communism is bad and why America and American values are better than communism. This used to be taught in schools. Why don't they pass laws saying, bring that shit back? Bring it back. It require it to be integrated into every social studies course. Create materials talking about this. Write books about this. Like build curriculum around this that you can then sell to teachers. Socialists are building curriculum. Socialists have teacher education planners, curriculum planners. They have all this stuff that teaches teachers how to integrate socialism and Marxism into their curriculum without people knowing what they're teaching. Why aren't conservatives doing exactly the same goddamn thing? It's like copy paste. All you have to do is copy their tactics. That's it. No, DeSantis did not do this in any way. He did not. You want one day? One day isn't going to do shit. I'm sorry. One day, communism is bad for one day is not actually what's required to solve this problem. You need to build curriculum around it.
Who learned how to do the embroidery, but then also digitize the patterns so that they can be preserved forever. And then they both made the shirt and wore it at a library program. You know, it's like, that's magic. So I wish we were talking about, like, more about what that means for a community, what it means for the history of the place, the future of the place, for just that basic human connection that we miss sometimes. What do we have to do to get more of that rather than trying to defend what little we have left of what I would argue is the best public institution in the history of the world, the library?
We ask all guests on the show for 3 book recommendations, and I cannot think of anyone better to ask this of. Not only are you a librarian, capital L, but you just admitted to being in the most aggressive sounding book club I have ever heard of in my life.
You know,
Okay, so you've just banned all sex education, including, and I'm not talking about comprehensive sex education. Comprehensive sex education is Marxism, but you've just banned sex education. I don't think it's a good idea to ban sex education. I'm sorry, I just don't. If you want to stop unwanted pregnancies, you need to teach kids how pregnancies happen, and you need to teach kids how not to get STDs. So this isn't going to work.
if you win the challenge at the end of the year, you know what your prize is?
What?
You get to invite a new person to join the club.
I was kind of hoping you were going to say a gold sticker.
Conservatives, kids have always had access to God fucking damn it. Kids have always had access to sexually explicit materials. I know this is something you don't want to hear. They have always had access to sexually explicit materials. If you continue to focus on, oh my God, kids might learn about what sex is before they're 18. You guys remember a time when boys hid Playboys under their mattresses, right? Did you think those boys were over 18? You guys know that kids watch R-rated movies, right? Kids watch sexually explicit movies. Like, they have access to the internet. Every single moment that conservatives spend trying to force their religiously dictated morality on to other people is a moment that you are allowing these people to win. I am so sick of this. Conservatives are the reason that the left is winning, because they are completely ineffectual in fighting back, because they always and consistently, guys, you always and consistently focus on the wrong things. You are never going to protect your little darlings from all sexually explicit material before they're 18. It is not going to happen. The internet is a thing. You bought your kids' phones. What did you think they were going to do with them? If this is the hill that you want to die on, then you are going to lose, and your kids are going to be indoctrinated to be little Marxists because you didn't focus on the things that actually mattered. And I'm going to keep yelling until conservatives get the goddamn point that their strategies and their tactics are completely goddamn ineffectual.
So, Chelsea, if you're interested, I'll keep you in mind. It's a big year for me, but I still think I'm going to do it.
It's a big year for you. All right, keep me in mind.
All right, okay.
Until then, do you have 3 books for us, Emily?
The first book that I want to suggest is a book about libraries that I think is just fantastic by Dan Green called The Promise of Access. And he's got a chapter about the library that just is some of the most solid analysis of what libraries can do and how we need to talk about them. So I would recommend Dan Green's book. Second is a book that's on the list of the top 10 banned books from the ALA called Flamer by Mike Corrado. It's a book about a kid at sleepaway camp. And I read it this summer when my kid was at sleepaway camp. And, you know, you read it and that what we're talking about, like, do they want to ban the book or they want to ban the person? And you read this beautiful, tender story of a kid struggling with his sexual identity at a Boy Scout camp. And it's so beautiful and sweet and gorgeous. So just a perfect graphic novel, I think. Very sweet. And then the last recommendation, have you read When We Were Beautiful by Mbola Mbue?
Yes, I have.
Oh, knocked my socks off. The best book I read this year. The first chapter of that book should be required reading.
Amazing recommendations.
Thank you.
All right.
Emily, thank you for joining me here today.
That seems to be the end of the podcast. New York Times did an excellent job covering for our Marxist ALA president who wants everyone to think that everyone is against her because they hate libraries and hate lesbians. But no. We just don't like Marxists, Emily. We just don't like them. Rottweiler says sheltering kids instead of talking about sexuality is an appropriate manner at home and school, only helps them to get captured by the Marxist left. I agree with that. Listen, I'm not for teaching pornography in schools. I don't think that's appropriate. But when you focus on this, Robin, and this is all you talk about and all you complain about and about every single day, while you're focusing on this, your kids are going to be learning about collectivism. Your kids are going to be learning that individuality is bad. Your kids are going to be learning to judge other people based on the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. Your kids are going to be learning that capitalism is the great evil that has unhinged the entire world. Do you want your kids learning those things because you're busy complaining that maybe they saw a boobie in sex ed class? Because I think that sounds like a really bad idea. I think it sounds like a really effing bad idea. People have got to start focusing on what matters. The socialists are very, 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 very highly aware that every single ounce of conservative energy is going into banning books. They're very aware of it. They use it to rally their base. They use it to get people fired up, and they aren't at all afraid of it. Because as I've explained numerous times, for every single book you ban, every single one that you high five each other because you got that gender queer book out of the library, they're going to replace that with 5 more books that you don't even know about. Because they're churning these books out. There are dozens of socialist book publishers that are churning these books out. So for every single book you get banned, they're going to replace it with 5 more. You get those 5 books banned, they're going to replace it with 5 more. They are not afraid of the book bans at all. They only use it to rile up their base. And in the meantime, well, you're over here banning books. The socialists are over here getting policies implemented, building curriculum that you don't know about, making changes to the student handbook. Like, they're over here because they know you're over here. This is classic misdirection, guys. They know conservatives are reading about books and drag queens over here, so they're letting you do it because it fires up their base. And meanwhile, they're working quietly over here where you're not paying attention to implement policies that are going to dictate the direction of your school district for the rest of your life. And I'm serious when I say for the rest of your life. I'm not being hyperbolic. Once policies are ingrained at the school district level, they are damn near impossible to change. And they are especially impossible to change when you don't know about them because you are not paying attention. Every single time you're running around over here complaining about books and books and books and books and books and books and books, you are allowing the Marxists to gain a greater foothold in public schools in ways that you are not even aware of. They are outsmarting you at every single level because you're so concerned about the books that you're paying attention to nothing else. I don't know how much more clear I can be about this. I really don't. And Ninja Artist, I have to say it over and over and over again because I've been screaming this for over a year and still people don't listen. They just don't listen. Stephen, thank you for the super chat. I wish that in my Christian school upbringing that I had had a class on Marxism versus capitalism and learned about this stuff. It should be a part of core curriculum if conservatives really cared. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Robin, you're not even interacting with the information that I'm telling you right now because you're so distracted by the books. You're not even interacting with the things that I'm saying to you right now. And this is what happens. You haven't even interacted with the ideas that I've given you because you're so distracted by the books. They're going to win, guys, because you're allowing them to win. I just don't know how much easier I can take it. They are going to win because you are allowing them to win. Until you change your actions and your focus and start focusing on things that actually matter, they are kicking our ass. This is why Emily doesn't have to resign her position, by the way. She's not resigning it because she knows she's winning. Chew on that. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. Thank you, Sarah with an H, for saying my eyes look nice. I do appreciate it. I know how to do makeup too. I couldn't wear makeup at the socialism conference because socialists don't really wear makeup. So I think I've been making up for it the past couple of weeks. Anyway, guys, as a reminder, please do make sure to subscribe to my Substack. That is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. It'll pop up here in a second. Maybe if my computer's being cooperative, maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, let me try that again. Oh my gosh. My computer is like running overtime right now. It's like, shut off the stream, Carlyn. Okay, I guess I'm not showing my Substack today. It's just not hanging on. Anyway, subscribe to my Substack, bing, carlyn.substack.com. And if you do want to support the work I'm doing, you can sign up for a paid subscription for $8 a month or $80 a year. And that helps to fund the work I'm doing. I will be back tomorrow for the 69th episode of The Cult. We're definitely not going to talk about sex tomorrow, are we? No, I am. I'm gonna become the total like teenager in sex ed class, like looking at the banana, like putting the condom on the banana sort of thing. It's gonna happen. So we're gonna do episode 69 tomorrow. I'm gonna have something saucy for us to talk about. But guys, that is all I have for today. Please do mount that like button on the way out the door. Take care, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon. Bye.